The Cold War wasn't only fought with nuclear missiles or spies in trench coats, it was fought with wheels. Military trucks carried the armies of the superpowers from Berlin to Siberia, from the deserts of the Middle East to the icy forests of Scandinavia. They didn't get the glory, but without them, tanks would have never moved, missiles would have never launched, and armies would have never eaten. These were the machines that quietly won the war of endurance. When the Second World War ended in 1945, the world was awash with military trucks. From the American GMC Juice and a Half, built by the millions, to the rugged Bedford QLs of Britain and the Soviet GAZ AA, these trucks had carried armies across continents. They had proven their worth, but they also revealed their limits. Most were designed for short-term service, push through mud, cross rivers, last long enough to win the war. By the late 1940s, many were worn out, obsolete, or simply too crude for the challenges ahead. The Cold War shifted military thinking. The new enemy wasn't across the Channel or a few hundred miles away. It was across oceans, across continents, hidden behind the Iron Curtain. Generals realized they needed a new kind of logistics. This wasn't about supplying short campaigns. It was about sustaining armies indefinitely, moving weapons of unimaginable power, and doing it in terrains ranging from German autobahns to Siberian wastelands. Surplus wartime vehicles filled the gap for a few years, but they were never going to be enough. New designs were needed, stronger frames, higher payloads, better engines, and more specialized roles. The Cold War would be a contest of endurance, and trucks would become the backbone of that endurance. And now here's the thing, if you want to see what machines define the West and the East, stick with me, because some of these trucks were so tough, they're still working today. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the rest. Britain was quick to respond. Out went the wartime Bedford QL, and in came the Bedford Ural in the early 1950s. With a 3-ton capacity, a simple petrol engine, and a no-nonsense design, it became the most familiar sight in British service. The Ural was everywhere, on NATO maneuvers in West Germany, in the jungles of Malaysia during the emergency, and even in Cyprus, supplying peacekeepers. Farmers in the UK later joked that Bedford seemed to come free with every field, because so many ended up in surplus sales. Its simplicity was its strength. A soldier with basic tools could keep it running, and it was rugged enough to outlast peacetime training and wartime deployments alike. Then came the AEC Militant. This was not a dainty lorry. It was huge, heavy, and capable of towing artillery that seemed impossible for a wheeled vehicle. Nicknamed the Knocker, it could pull 10 tons with ease. Drivers often cursed its road manners. It was slow, noisy, and not particularly comfortable. But if you needed brute force, you called for a militant. During NATO exercises, militants were often tasked with moving bridging equipment and artillery pieces. They became a staple of Britain's heavy logistics for decades, even lingering into the 1980s long after newer designs had arrived. But perhaps the most famous of Britain's Cold War trucks was the Scammell Explorer. This wasn't a cargo hauler in the usual sense. It was a recovery truck, designed to pull broken down vehicles off battlefields, tow trucks, or lift heavy equipment with its crane. The Explorer had a presence about it. Its long bonnet and huge wheels gave it a swagger that made it a favorite with crews. Many Explorers ended up in civilian life after military service, where fairground operators and heavy haul firms prized them for their strength and durability. To this day, restored Explorers remain stars of military vehicle rallies. Across the Atlantic, America applied on the GMC M35, better known as the Juice and a Half. The 2.5-ton truck replaced the wartime CCKW and quickly became the backbone of US Army logistics. The M35 was endlessly adaptable. Troop transport, fuel tanker, mobile kitchen, communications truck, even gun truck during the Vietnam War. Its 6x6 drive and simple mechanical design made it dependable in jungles, deserts, and snowy forests alike. By the time production ended, hundreds of thousands had been built, and they spread worldwide through US aid programs. To many soldiers, the Juice was as much a symbol of the Cold War as the Jeep. Together, these Western workhorses kept NATO on the move. Whether supplying outposts in the Cold War front lines of Germany or carrying aid and equipment to far-flung conflicts, they were the muscle behind the headlines. While the West valued versatility and support, the Eastern Bloc focused on sheer durability. The Soviet Union's ZIL-157 was one of the first post-war designs to become iconic. Its huge front grille, tall stance, and 6x6 drive made it a formidable sight on the roads of the USSR. It wasn't glamorous, but it could slog through snow, mud, and swamp with a stubborn determination. Soviet doctrine emphasized simplicity. The ZIL could be repaired with basic tools in the field. Spare parts were often interchangeable. If something broke, soldiers improvised and kept the truck moving. By the early 1960s, the Soviets introduced the Ural 375. This was a step up in power and payload, designed to carry heavy loads across Siberia and Eastern Europe. Its petrol engine was notoriously thirsty, burning through fuel at nearly 50 liters per 100 kilometers. But in Soviet planning, reliability mattered more than efficiency. If you had fuel, the Ural would go anywhere. Soldiers sometimes joked that a Ural could run on vodka if needed, so long as you treated it with respect. Despite its flaws, it became one of the most widely used trucks in the Warsaw Pact, serving in roles from troop carrier to missile transporter. Yet it was the Czechoslovakian Tatras that truly impressed the world. The Tatra 813 and later the 815 were marvels of engineering. They used a unique backbone chassis with independent swinging half-axles, giving them unmatched off-road ability. Their air-cooled V12 engines avoided the problems of frozen coolant in winter. Tatras could climb hills, cross rivers, and traverse terrain that stopped tanks. To NATO observers, they looked alien. To Warsaw Pact commanders, they were indispensable. Tatras carried everything from fuel to surface to air missiles, and they became symbol of Eastern engineering brilliance. These trucks weren't just machines, they embodied the Eastern Bloc's philosophy. Build tough, build simple, and build to survive extremes. Whether it was the Afghan mountains, the Polish forests, or the Siberian tundra, they kept rolling long after Western trucks might have bogged down. The Cold War was not just a standoff of weapons, it was also an arms race in engineering. Trucks became platforms for experimentation. Western designers developed cab-over layouts for better visibility and compact dimensions. They experimented with modular bodies, allowing a single chassis to serve as cargo hauler one day and radar carrier the next. Innovations like central tire inflation systems let drivers adjust pressures while driving, making it easier to cross sand or snow. Snorkels allowed trucks to ford rivers, while winches gave them the ability to rescue themselves or others. In the East, innovations were more rugged but no less effective. Cold start kits were essential for Siberian service. Insulated fuel lines kept engines running in sub-zero conditions. Air-cooled engines like those in Tatras meant fewer problems in extreme climates. Simplicity was seen as a virtue. Better to have a truck that anyone could fix with basic tools than one that required a factory workshop. Some of these Cold War innovations found their way into civilian trucking. Central tire inflation, once a military luxury, is now seen on modern off-road and construction trucks. Cab-over designs became common across Europe. Even today, the DNA of Cold War experimentation can be found in vehicles driving on highways. When the Cold War wound down in the late 1980s and early 1990s, armies no longer needed vast fleets of trucks, but these vehicles were far from finished. Surplus sales saw them scattered across farms, logging camps, and construction sites. In Britain, Bedford RLs became logging trucks and farm haulers. AEC militants, despite their size, found work moving timber or heavy equipment. Scammell explorers were snapped up by fairgrounds and recovery operators who loved their cranes. In America, juices flooded surplus auctions. Farmers bought them cheap, fire departments converted them into tankers, and enthusiasts turned them into off-road machines. In Eastern Europe, Tatras became quarry trucks, construction haulers, and expedition vehicles. ZILs and Urals lingered in backyards, sometimes patched up with spare parts scavenged from other machines. To this day, it's not unusual to see a Cold War truck grinding along a rural road in Poland or Hungary, still doing the work it was built for. Collectors also grew in numbers. Military shows began to feature restored Bedfords, Scammells, Tatras, and Juices. For many, it wasn't just about the machine, it was about preserving a piece of history. Starting one up at a show drew crowds. The roar of an old V8 or diesel engine connecting people to a past that still felt close. But these trucks demanded respect. Owners often joked that starting an AEC militant in winter was a three-man job. One to turn the key, one with a can of Easy Start, and one to pray. They weren't convenient, they weren't economical, but they were built to last, and they earned the loyalty of those who cared for them. They remind us that history is not just about glamorous fighter jets or terrifying missile systems, it's also about the unglamorous giants that kept everything moving. And now it's over to you. Did you ever drive one of these trucks? Maybe you served with them, repaired them, or still have one tucked away behind a shed. Share your stories in the comments, because these machines deserve to be remembered not only as vehicles, but as lifelines of the Cold War. If you liked this video, do give it a like and subscribe, and see you in the next one.